Thousands of Texans will pay their respects this afternoon to President George Herbert Walker Bush when his body is carried by train for his burial. After the funeral at St. Martin's Episcopal Church in Houston, the train will travel 70 miles to the former president's final resting place in College Station. The trip is expected to take about 2 hours and 25 minutes. Reid shows us where the train will end its journey.
We'll have probably the element leaders over there.
High school seniors Asenet Ruiz and Abel Martinez are preparing for President George H.W. Bush's farewell ride through his cherished Texas countryside.
Whenever the train does pass by, I'll call them all to attention.
They will join about 7,000 other students along the tracks in Spring, Texas.
I think we're all a little bit nervous. We don't want to mess anything up.
The 17-year-olds never knew Mr. Bush as their president, but want to commemorate him for his public service.
We'd like to honor Bush 41 because he's done so much for Texas.
Our core values are integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. That second core value, service before self, really resonates with what George H.W. Bush did, where he helped a lot of the community and the nation.
Back in 2005, Union Pacific Railroad honored President Bush, the 41st president, by giving this locomotive the number 4141 and painting it to resemble Air Force One. Later today, this very locomotive will pull the train that will carry President Bush to his final resting place. A locomotive that President Bush himself once got a chance to take for a spin.
Some have called this Rail Force One.
Scott Moore is senior vice president at Union Pacific Railroad and worked with President Bush on his 1992 campaign.
There's a long history in this country of fallen leaders going to their final resting place by train.
Fallen leaders including Abraham Lincoln.
Slowly the train backs into Union Station.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And Senator Bobby Kennedy have been carried by train to their burial sites to give people across the country a chance to pay their respects. But the tradition hasn't been practiced since the funeral of President Eisenhower nearly 50 years ago.
When the Bush family asked us to provide a train for this particular event, obviously the uniqueness of having a locomotive painted in honor of this president was the obvious choice. It's an opportunity for people here in Texas and really across the country to take one last look at this great man in a movement to his final resting place.
So this is where you and your friends will be when that train comes by.
About 60 miles down the tracks, Ann Hayes is hosting a farewell party for the former president.
I'll probably be sad, but on the other hand, I'll be happy that I got to know him and be a docent in his museum for 20 years.
Office of George Bush.
The 80-year-old has volunteered more than 7,500 hours at his presidential library on the campus of Texas A&M.
When you're doing all this volunteer work, do you feel you're doing it for President Bush?
Yes, yes, yes.
Hayes met the president while volunteering and received this photograph that she now treasures.
What was he like when he would come by the museum?
Very down to earth and he'd come over and talk to everybody and just really a neat person.
She says Thursday's procession will be a celebration of his life.
What do you think you're going to be feeling when that train passes by?
Oh, I think my heart's going to be beating very heavily, but I'll try to hold my emotions and be happy like he'd want me to be.
Now, the train has almost a dozen cars for Bush family and friends, and in the middle of the train is a converted baggage car painted red, white, and blue, and it will have plexiglass sides, and it will be brightly lit inside so that people can see the casket of President Bush as it slowly passes by on its way here to his final resting place. Nora?
Historic indeed, and what a sight to see. Chip, thank you so much.